I pass everything with flying colors in terms of financial results. And then they start picking apart some things like, why isn't it bigger? Like, you spending too much time with your kid. I'm like, what? Like, where did this stuff come from?
That's
Like,
insane to
it
me.
was it was insane. I like the numbers of the numbers, guys. You're not buying my lifestyle. You're buying the business and the numbers.
Welcome to Expand Your Empire, the podcast where women stop deferring wealth and start building financial power. I'm Amanda Taylor, investor, strategist, and disruptor of outdated money rules. It's time to own your worth, grow your assets, and build a legacy that lasts.
That is Christine Slocumb. She built a healthcare marketing agency over 22 years. She made herself replaceable on purpose and then sold it to private equity. And then she wrote the book on everything the sale price doesn't tell you. So, welcome back to Expand Your Empire. I am Amanda Taylor, and most conversations about selling a company stop at the wire transfer. The money hits, everyone claps, roll credits. But Christine's book, Mastering the Exit Gauntlet, is about the part that comes after. What happens to your identity when the inbox is quiet on day one? What it costs to be the only woman in the room for those 22 years, and the reframe that I keep coming back to. Everything you get after closing day is fun money, and what you do with it is the actual point. If you still believe your business is only worth something because you're in it every day, stay for this one. Christine is proof that it's worth more without you. Well, no, I'm excited. I actually finished the book yesterday.
You did.
I did. And I was even more than halfway through when I asked you to talk. And now I'm like, oh, even more because at the very end, you added my reason for being on the planet, which was the wealth mindset. So I had so many things in there that I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
The thing that I wanted to talk about the most, yes, you grew and sold a business. You worked and you did the thing that all of us, want to do. And then you wrote a book about how hard it was. And I think it was eye-opening from one side. Yes, I understand how hard it is, but I think the thing that we're all focused on is the business is hard. Running a business is hard. Growing a business is hard. And then when you sell, it's like, oh, great, I take my money and run. And that was totally not your experience. So when you were building the business, and this is something you talked about in a very small chapter about being a woman, did it feel like a company or did it feel like this is part of you?
Yeah, more the latter, right? I have the logo tattooed on my leg.
Oh, wow. That is a part of you.
Right? It was very much a part of me, identity. So it was a big thing to like let that part of me go. Right. I'm still working through that. Right. It's a very, and that's why I did Elle's workshop. I'm looking for like, what is that next? I'm better, but I was like a
Mhm.
wreck after
Yeah.
after it. And I think that's from a place of not being really ready to sell, as I talk in the book. And I really encourage people to think through it first. Don't just take the first seller or buyer call that wants to speak
Hmm.
with you and say, oh, yeah, this would be nice. I'm burnt out. I just want to be rid of this. Or what am I going to do with this? Really figure out what you want to do next, because there's going to be this hole. There's going to be, even if you're like, I'm ready, I'm totally ready, you're like, oh, okay, my inbox is empty on day one. That's a
Yeah.
weird feeling. There's no Slack. There's no one texting me. You have this whole other process in your life than where you were before. It's all good now. Like
Yeah.
I love it. I love the freedom of it. That's why I was like, oh, I told my husband, I got like 3 calls this afternoon. That's a lot. Whereas it used to be,
It
8
might be
a.m.
too
to 5
much.
p.m., and you don't realize how tired you are until you get out of it. But yes, I think for a lot of people, the business, especially women, becomes, it's like their baby, as we've talked about. It's
Hmm.
family. It's, I had people with me for 20 years. In some cases, I knew there were spouses, their kids. And then now I don't talk to them. Not, like they will pick up the phone, but you're not in people's everyday life
Yeah.
that you were before. So it's like a whole new like social network. It's a whole new reinvention of self and purpose. So yeah, I'm happy to
Yeah.
talk through a lot of that.
And let's talk about, because I work with business owners who are in the thick of running a business and building it in a way that they can leverage it in whatever way, which usually means exit. So it's a very different mindset from where you were running a really successful business, and then you got to a point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And there's a number of different reasons that I think people come up against when they decide to sell. And it's rarely like intricately planned. I think it just becomes a decision. So I kind of wanted to talk about everything before that. Were you running a business with the intent to exit? Was that your plan?
Yeah, so I can talk through that of when in the 22-year journey
Hmm.
of running the company that started to enter my mindset. And it was about 18 years in, where I started to talk to folks in the M&A landscape, a lawyer who I knew, and she was like, Chris, it's going to take you 5 years to do this, and you got to like step out of the business more and don't do client work and just go sell, make yourself replaceable. So all I did do a lot of that, which actually turned into a better lifestyle for me too. So that was great in that
Yeah.
respect. I could go on vacation for a week without having to check email.
Oh,
So all those things were great, even if I didn't sell. And I'll talk to your listeners. I encourage them to do the same there. You should be able to step away from your business and go on vacation.
you should
And
be able to
many
do
people
that,
cannot.
period.
Right. Many people cannot.
No.
And so that's always keeping you in a hype cycle and a stress cycle. You never are truly off. I watch people on the beach on their laptops and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so sad. Like, it took me, for the first 18 years, that was me on the plane, on the beach, with family. Oh, I got to go do a call.
Yeah.
No. So then like I luckily had some good advisors that said, make yourself replaceable, get to a point where you can take that 2 week vacation and tell them they can spend $5,000 to fix any problem. And unless someone's
Yeah.
bleeding out or we're losing our biggest client, don't bother me. And it's really interesting to see the dynamics that come up in that because folks on the teams then feel very empowered
Hmm.
and they respect their role more because they're like, I don't need to report to my boss. I'm just going to go fix stuff. Yay.
Yeah. It is a huge thing. And I I talk a lot with my clients and then people about the ego side of things. And not in a arrogant way, like I'm the only person that can do this, but a truly inherent belief that if I'm not working, then I'm not worth anything. I'm not valuable. I must not be, I can't be earning anything because I'm not doing enough. And I think you talked a little bit about that on the exit side of your business, of even in the delegation side, when I see a lot of founders really do start to put that on their team and automate their processes and build out a business that's actually working for them, they lose something just in that season. So did you have that feeling at all, or were you like, sweet, let's
No,
roll?
loved it. Loved
Good.
it. Loved it. Loved it. I maybe missed the client work a tad, but I
Mhm.
really liked selling much more than doing the client work. So for me, that was very freeing to say, like, okay, I have a COO, I have a creative director, account managers. They just handle everything on that side. All I have to do is go close the business
Yeah.
and then from there and then work with the team on cultural issues and things like that. So
Yeah.
I actually loved that. I used to say I did step away even when I was running on Wednesday mornings in the summer and go play golf league. And I used to say, I'm making money while I'm out here playing golf.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yes. Justified.
Yay! You want to go get your nails done. You want to go, like, you want to go play golf. You want to go do something. You're still making money. You are so limited. I started as an independent consultant, right? And that was the problem. It's not scalable at all, right? It was my hours and only my hours. But the minute you start to bring in four, five, six people and they're making you money while
Yeah.
you're not slaving in the business, that is freedom. That is total freedom.
That's it right there. That's what I wanted to say is you didn't come into this, you and 10 people as a business. You started on your own. What was that progression like? When did you hit that like teeter-totter moment of like, okay, I'm gonna scale this and it ain't gonna be on my back?
Yeah, interesting. I was probably about kind of the progression. I had started because I was hitting glass ceilings working in
Hmm.
startups. And I said, I can't find an agency that speaks fluent technology and can do tech work, so I'm going to do that. And B, like I'm going to try this because I'm like 30 years old. I keep hitting glass ceilings. I keep losing VP jobs to like 52-year-old men who don't know what they're doing, even though I'm in the business for like a year and they just come in and they don't know what they're doing. So I said, okay, how bad can this be? I want to create a workplace that will be fair and just, and people will love to come to work. I want people to say this is the best job I ever had. And so that's what I always knew. I thought I'd have a few people, but I didn't hire people as W-2s until about 7 years in. I had
Okay.
1099s, I had a consortium,
Hmm.
people, partners, 1099 freelancers that worked with me, and they're also making you money, which is great.
Right.
And you don't have the same obligation. So for a lot of people, that model works really, really well in today's kind of gig economy to just hire
Yep.
freelancers. And I will tell you, it used to be taboo to sell a company with all freelancers. Now you can do it quite easily.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Not in
So
California.
yes, California is the one thing where I had one PR person. We had to be very, very careful about how we structured
Yeah,
everything. I couldn't have her do time cards and all that kind of thing.
it's fun.
Yes. So yes, California is the one thing you have to be careful of. One state there, New York a little bit too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then I decided like 6, 7 years in, what I was finding is people who are 1099s are not as invested in the business
Right.
or the outcome. They can just on a dime leave, you can just on a dime fire them,
Yeah.
so they don't feel as part of the group. They're not building the culture. So I brought in W-2s at about that 6, 7 year point, and scaled from there. We were a very small team until about that 2019 when I decided I wanted to sell. And then I knew I had to get the business to a size that was sellable. And
Wow.
that was about $1 million in profit.
Okay.
And so, yeah, to get to that point, it took 15 people plus contractors to get to that revenue and EBITDA or profit point
Right.
to sell it. And that was also the time kind of COVID hit. We're in healthcare marketing, everything goes crazy. All the trade show budgets go into digital marketing and
Hmm.
PR. We're sitting right there. We were a remote team forever. So we didn't skip a beat. We're like, this is normal.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was like a hockey stick up. So even as I went through the gauntlet of selling the business and had deals fall through, we're continuing to grow, 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 grow every year because just the lucky timing
The nature of everything. Yeah.
of healthcare and biotech during that period of time.
And that, you said something to me the other day when we were talking too. You got out right before AI became the thing. Like you had this perfect storm of things in your business, which was great for you across the board. And it doesn't always happen that way. That was awesome. And you had still had challenges in the midst of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could be a $10 million net profit, $50 million business and have challenges in the sales process.
Yeah.
Is it easier? Yes. You're going to have multiple buyers fighting over you. So
Mhm.
it's easier the larger you get. But even I've seen very large deals go south too. So that isn't, or the owners don't make their earn out because something changes in the dynamic of the industry. Look at if you had sold in 2019 and you're in the travel industry, for
Right.
example, and 2020 happens, are you going to make your earnout? No, you're not. Right? So a lot of this is luck and timing. I tell people, if you're looking to retire or you want to de-risk, it is all a matter of time, but you can't time it just like you can't time the stock market. You just
Yeah.
have to make sure you are happy with what you're going to get at close, the money you're going to get in that wire transfer the day you close, which is going to be some percentage of the
Yeah.
total deal value, and make sure that's your number and look at everything else as bonus.
That's a great point. Yeah, because everything else is a variable after
Everything
that.
else is a variable. If you're only getting, let's say, $1 million at close, now you're paying at least capital gains tax.
Right.
If you're in California, you're paying more
Right.
on that. So you're getting anywhere between, 50% and 67, 70%, maybe a little bit more if you live in Texas or Florida, one of
Hmm.
those states. But you're still only getting a percentage of that close.
Right.
And can you live on that for the rest of your life and well invested
Right.
and with folks like you? Or, are you waiting for that earnout? Do you need to have a seller's note to where you're going to be the banker and
Yeah.
relying on that? You are at the bottom of the barrel, baby, because, if you have a seller's note when you sell your business and they have like an SBA or something else,
Hmm.
and the bank gets their money first, the
Right.
institutional investors get their money first, you're at the bottom if they declare bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So you have to look at everything else after the wire close day as fun money.
That's a great point. And as I was reading through all of your stuff, I was like, this is like a real estate deal. This is like a real estate deal. Everybody thinks that their house or their project, whatever. I was at an investor meeting for a huge multifamily development, luxury real estate. And I'm like, everybody thinks their deal is the best deal. And you're right. When you bring in institutional money versus investor money and all of these different variables, and my brain is going through that math the way, and other people are looking at, well, no, it's just that there's so many moving parts to the deal and what comes out at the end. So yeah, I was comparing it all. I'm like, this is just like a real estate deal. It's the same
Absolutely.
thing.
And what's good in real estate? Simpler the better. The
Yeah.
best my brokers I ended up closing the deal, who closed the deal for me, told the buyer simple. She wants simple. And sometimes taking a little less money to get simple is peace of mind. Sometimes people are like, oh, I'm willing to go, put it on black and ride it out and get the earn out or take like a lot of equity in this. It's a very personal decision because I
Sure.
have some clients who are like, the money doesn't matter to me. Like, I just want peace of mind. I want my mental health. I'm fine. I have a low end lifestyle, and some are like, no, I want every freaking dime out of this thing,
It's a
right?
very personal decision. So you had a very short chapter in the book about being a woman in this situation. And I've talked ad nauseum on this podcast about women in VC were less than 2% of capital going to women-owned businesses and all of these things. And you pointed that out in your book as well. And what I was interested in is the transaction itself and being a woman decision maker in that transaction. So, what did you notice about that, about being a woman through that transaction process? Did you feel like you had to prove something differently
Yeah,
to the buyers?
yeah, there's definitely a proving aspect. There's more that needs to come from the numbers. Like they say, women have to prove everything. Guys get hired on potential or promoted on potential. Women get promoted on results. It was the same thing in the sale. I had one deal go south because it was during COVID. We couldn't meet face to face. When they finally, I could tell there was like a very misogynistic vibe in the whole last diligence call. Now, this is after we've been through diligence. They've spent $250,000 with their legal team. I passed everything with flying colors in terms of financial results. And then they start picking apart some things like, why isn't it bigger? Like, you spending too much time with your kid. I'm like, what? Like, where did this stuff come from?
That's
Like,
insane to
it was
me.
It was insane. I like the numbers of the numbers, guys. You're not buying my lifestyle, you're buying the business and the numbers. But yeah, that was a really weird one. That was a really weird, and probably the one I got the most angry about, because I was
Yeah.
like, you knew this all along. But just the general vibe of being in a room, being on all these calls. I probably talked to 200 people over the course of trying to sell for 3 years, whether they were potential buyers, the brokers, the private equity. And I spoke to two other women. Two other women. One was a
That's what gets me.
CEO, and one was a junior analyst at a private equity firm. The rest were all dudes, and even like I love the private equity folks that bought
Mhm.
us. I think they're great. They're like they win top awards for owner friendly in the country, and treated me fabulously. But I go into this big boardroom in Dallas. My feet are hanging off the chair.
Yeah.
They're all like 6'6" and above. I'm the only woman in the room, and I turned to, other people and my brokers, and I'm in like, man, I started this thing 23 years ago, and I was the only woman in the room, and I'm still the only woman in the room. And it's just odd, it just puts you in this very a little bit uncomfortable position. I mean, hey, I went to engineering school. I was used to being around guys
Mhm.
forever, but you're in that like very awkward negotiation, like last phase, prove yourself. They're throwing out all really tough questions at you to try and assess their risk.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure, you're giving them transparency, but you're also like really hyping this up. And it's difficult when you're the something different in the room. It was interesting. I went to a conference one time, and I think it was one of the banks or law firms that threw a women's leadership at this healthcare event. And they had invited some of their male employees too. So there was at this table, and there was 10, 12 women and one guy at each table. And the guy at our table was like, this is the most bizarre, uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced. Like in a nice way, he was like curious. And I'm like, and we're like, yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to our
welcome,
world.
welcome to our everyday, every boardroom, and he's like, oh wow. I think it changed his whole perspective that day, because we're like chatting about makeup and chatting about clothes and chatting about everything, business, but in a very different way
Yes.
then you'll chat about it in a mixed audience, or if you're the only woman at the table.
Exactly. And that is it. We have to, do you think that we have to negotiate differently, or because all of a sudden the thing being valued isn't what you've maybe built, but you personally, it's just such a weird thing when you're I don't know, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but do you think you act differently in that scenario, or were you able to separate it?
No, I was Meryl Streep with an Oscar because in that last deal, because you almost have women. We tend to say too much.
Mm.
We tend to be more forthcoming with information, and the more information that gets out, the
Yeah.
something they could pick out, a vibe, a factoid. That, oh, I don't
Mhm.
like that. Well, tell me more about that. Like, what? You did that 5 years ago?
Oh
You
my
know, Whereas I almost like equate it to like being in a courtroom. Say yes,
Yeah,
no, answer the question, only answer the question, no other information. Now, at the same time, I encourage people to be authentic. Like
right.
if that's going to make you so stressed out to not be verbal at all, then you don't do that. And you want to come across as, friendly and competent and stuff. But we have to have this fine line of being friendly, but being competent, but being nice, but being tough. And
It's
on all these
exhausting.
things, don't say, you took 3 months off in the business to raise your kid. It's a weird dynamic and weird balancing act to try and navigate through that. But
Yeah,
yes, I tell when I'm exit advising women clients, I say, hey, be yourself, but keep it direct, keep it on point, keep pointing back to the numbers. Keep pointing
right.
back to the numbers, keep pointing back to what you built, keep pointing back to your team, who's on your bench. how they can take this over easily and don't get in a lot of the like emotional stuff.
It's so difficult because I do think we as women tend to emotionally merge with the business differently than men. It's just our nature. And, in a lot of situations that makes us better, stronger leaders, but in it has its place. How did you separate your personal worth from the valuation of the company?
That's an interesting one. Still working on it, Amanda. Yeah, I always tried to have things that meant a lot to me outside of the business, whether that was
Just good.
participation in sports, whether that was yoga, whether that was being a mom, being a
Mhm.
wife. Right? I had things outside of the business that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And so and then I've tried and still I'm trying to look at all the attributes that made me a good leader, made me a good business owner, and say, I still have all those. How can I apply them to other
Yeah.
areas of my life? Just because I'm not the CEO of Clarity Quest anymore doesn't mean I'm not a good organizer. I'm not a good culture builder. I'm not a
Hmm.
good people connector, right? And so I encourage your audience to look like, what have you done well?
Hmm.
And where can you apply that to other things in your life that you're extremely interested in, or you've always wanted to do, but the business timing and obligations didn't let you do that. And then it's very easy for other people to tell you how much the business is worth, right? That's a pretty cut and dried calculation of a range.
Yeah.
It's only worth what people will pay for it, yes, but there's a range of multiples of your revenue or EBITDA or your net profit, excuse me,
Hmm.
that that any advisor can tell you you're probably going to land between X and Y in that. And then a lot of people have to say, like, yeah, that's what it's worth. It means more to me, but this is reality
Yeah.
and this is what it's worth now. And then I work with a lot of owners who like, okay, well, I want 10 million. And I go, okay, well, here's what it's going to take to sell the business for that. Are you invested in that? Can you invest in the business, time and money?
Mm.
Some of them say yes, some of them say, oh no, I would take five.
Yeah. And maybe,
I'll be done for 5. And I go, time is money.
yeah.
We're all not immortal. So, how much is it worth to you to have your time back? And some people are like, I want to run this till I die. And I go, okay, great, fine. I mean, if you love it and you're like Warren Buffett, and even he stepped down some, but
Yeah.
if you want to, because it gives you life and energy, and great, do it, do
Yeah.
it.
And that's a thing is time. I think that's a thing that when we're starting a business, like you talked about the laptop at the beach, it's like, don't laugh. I just bought this like laptop box shade that I can take my laptop to the pool and I can go out and work while I'm in the sun. But you're like, that is exciting. Like, that is what you do. That is who you are. That's how you've built your identity. And then at some point, most of us are like, wow, I just built myself a really expensive job and I can't take the vacation or I can't do the thing or I can't even make the yoga class half the time, whatever it is. And so it becomes less about the money and more about the time and figuring out the balance of the two because you got to pay for the time kind of thing.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's just a restructure of the business. Hiring a great number two. A lot of businesses do not have a great number two. And boy, mine was awesome. So I was so lucky to have him in that, like, so hiring someone you can run all the operations, run all the stuff you don't like. Make sure you're outsourcing a bookkeeper. I like ran my own books for the first like 10 years. That's just dumb.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, it is.
it's just dumb, right? I'm like, no, like there's a great book, I think it's called Scaling People. And it's like, are you doing the $1,000 an hour work? As the CEO, you should do the $1,000 an hour work. Anything below that, outsource it, hire someone. Don't be doing that.
Yeah.
You'll save more money in the long run
Yes.
doing that and build the business quicker. Once I did, that's when the business also took off, in addition to having lucky timing around COVID and
Right.
healthcare. And so I was like, oh, I just have to go sell now. I can spend every day networking, selling, pipeline on this. And boy, that works versus being mired down in,
Yes.
client on sites and things like that. But some businesses love the customer or client work. The owner loves doing that. And then I said, okay, well, then you're going to have a harder job because hiring a salesperson is the hardest job,
Yeah,
I believe, a good one, but not impossible. So go hire and train a really good salesperson. And it's probably going to take 3 years to get them fully up to speed because everything's in your head and case
exactly.
studies, etc. But you can get them there, but know you're going to be paying big commissions out to that person.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. You talk about the restructuring. It's what is scalable. You doing all of the day to day isn't
Oh,
at all. And even there's so many different ways to structure it. And whether or not someone wants to be scalable is a whole other, it just, that's really identifying who you want to be. This is what you and I are learning. What experience do I want to be having
right.
running this business? Who do I want to be? And I think a lot of people haven't asked themselves that because they've just gotten caught up in the machine. And then they get to a point, they're like, well, what? Now what? What do I do
Right.
now?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the end of the book. You talk about wealth mindset, and I got excited because that's what before the sale, I mean, you had a successful business, but how did you think about money?
I looked at money as very transactional. Money came in every month, and or I was like in control and extracting it out of the business. I got a great bonus every December because I'm extracting money to zero
Yeah.
out the books.
Yeah.
S corp, so you don't want to leave it in there, right?
Right.
So very transactional though. It was money in, money out on my expense side. Since the sale, now I don't have a paycheck coming in. That was really weird at first and kind of
Hmm.
scary. You're like, ooh, okay. But then, like, my husband had no problem with this at all. He's like, look at our Bernstein account, and yeah, we're fine. So
Right.
I paid myself a paycheck out of investment every month because that made me feel comfortable. I was like, okay, every month on the first, that money comes from my investment account into my bank account, just like my paycheck did. Yay! And that for me worked. Other people can be just like, yeah, I'm going to take out money when I need it or whatever.
Right.
But it became much more flow of the universe with money changing hands and like, hey, I can now pay for people to have jobs because I go to their restaurant,
Yes.
or I'm going to my spa appointment. I am throwing money back into charity. I'm like very excited to work with my alma mater's women's
Yes.
leadership committee, right? So like it affords me this ability now to put the money back in circulation and help others. And I don't freak out about it. I mean, now it's been easy with the stock market the way it goes. If we talk to me in like 5 years, if there's a downturn,
Yeah.
um, but still, like my husband and I knew the number that we needed, and we don't have the highest flying lifestyle, but we know exactly
Hmm.
what makes us comfortable, and we'd be fine. Like even if the
Yeah.
stock went down, and that's why I say people got to know their numbers because that changes your relationship with how you're looking at money too. If you're like, ooh, I sold the business and now I have no income and I'm struggling and I got to wait till I collect Social Security, and what's Social Security going to be in 10
Nothing.
years? Right? I mean, that to me would be scary. Other people are like, I'm fine with that. I'll live in a cabin in the woods. I'm like, okay.
Right.
Seriously, right? And some people are like,
Again.
oh my God, it's like for on White Lotus, I'm too old to be not uncomfortable and not fly a private jet,
Yes.
There's the whole spectrum of people. So knowing yourself in that relationship to money, very
Yeah.
important.
And I found it fascinating you talked about it just because you had maybe you or someone else that exited had all these zeros that popped into their account one day. it doesn't change the relationship they had with money. They could still be really worried about what's going to happen to it. And that is a huge premise for everything, I think, is your relationship to it and the fear around it, or even the shame around it. You talked
Absolutely.
about relationships that changed as a result of it. I mean, this changes your life in a lot of different ways. So it's not just all the things that you can do now that you have money. What happened on the relationship side of things?
Yeah, there's like three different categories of people, right? There's those people who are joyous and happy for you and hold them very close.
Mhm.
There's those people who are all of a sudden like, what could you get me?
Mm.
Oh, can I come stay at your beach house? Like, right? All of a sudden
Yeah.
you're like, okay, you're my best friend, kind of people. And then and
Yeah.
then there's the, kind of the jealous people. And then even like people who are in your orbit and really authentic, they can't just jump on a trip to New Zealand that I'm gonna do in January,
Yeah.
and I feel weird like asking like, and I'm like, I'm not flying in coach, sorry. And then you're like, oh, you're gonna be stuck in coach, and I'm like up in the business class fly flat seat. That's a weird. It's a weird kind of uncomfortable dynamic when all of a sudden your relationship with money changes in your social
Yeah.
network, and you're like, I can afford this stuff. But then like other people who have sold or in a different, but they're not your friends. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like big imposter syndrome for a lot of people, this uncomfortable syndrome, with your friends that you've been on the same wealth spectrum
Hmm.
with your entire life, and now it's different and you feel awkward, like, can you like afford to, like, you don't want to ask that question, can you afford to go on this trip with me? I'm gonna do this and spend this, like that's just such a weird conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm paying this much.
Or I'll pay, like, and then you're like, oh well, I'll pay for you, and then people feel very weird about that,
Yeah.
and they're like, no, I don't. Some people are fine, but then like, the more authentic people in your life are like, oh no, 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 like I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very much latest season of White Lotus with the three women. She pays for her friends to go on this White Lotus trip, and what that dynamic does to the friendship, because one is more successful than
Yeah.
the others.
There's so much that comes with it. And one thing I wanted to talk about was in investing now. And yes, you have your investments, and I talk about investing all the time and like which ones are for equity, which ones are for growth and appreciation, which ones are for income, and which one we talked about investing in women, and you were looking at doing some angel investing and some other things. So you've got all these options. Did selling the business change your relationship with risk at all?
Yes, yes, and I'm still waiting for a second bite on the back end, and that's very much going to change.
Got it.
Um, because that's so the first money at close was what we needed to retire and hopefully live for 40 years,
Okay.
on that. The fund money, and I still did some angel investment. I've
Yeah.
done some women-led healthcare companies and
Hmm.
angel investing and women's leadership charity and things like that. But I'm really going to do some interesting things once I get that second bite, because that's the fun money, right? And
Yeah.
I'd much rather see it go towards amazing causes to promote women in STEM, women leadership, entrepreneurs in healthcare, regardless of gender, because we need a lot
Right.
in that area. And I'd much rather see it go to that than taxes,
Yeah.
frankly, because it can, I'm then directing where it's going in the economy
Yeah.
more. I'll still pay my fair share, believe me, but that's I think more empowering to me to be able to invest in those angel investments. It's some of the best part of this country, and what it affords women to be able to do and invest in those types of activities and have the freedom
Yeah.
to do that. So that's on my master plan. I've dabbled a little bit with what I can right
Hmm.
now. I got to keep my base. But then I certainly have things in my trust, in my will, of
Yeah.
where some of that's going to go to after. And my daughter is an entrepreneur, so investing in her and what she's doing in building a business, and then having some really interesting plans for what I'm going to do once that second bite comes in
Yeah.
on the equity. And I think, as women, we look in like, oh, they're my family and I'm like my employees and what's going to happen. I certainly had issues around that. People with me a long time.
Yeah.
But you can find ways to reward and incentivize them. They can make out in your deals. They can make out in some of them are, in their 30s. They may get sold 2 or 3 times with equity. Get them
Right.
equity, and get them incentive units, and they can then grow with the new owner, and the new owner is going to maybe sell and sell. They might sell 3 times. They may end up making more money than you when you
Exactly.
look at it, right? So you have to look at that. Is it going to work for everyone? No, because some people are not going to like the new buyer. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to change. But everyone is a free, responsible adult, right? They could have just
Yeah.
walked on you at any time, right? We're at will employees in this country.
Yeah.
We're at will employees. They could walk anytime. So you have to look at, say, like, hey, I can take de-risk and take money off the table and then use that money and put it back into society in different ways. And whereas maybe I affected the lives of my 10 employees, I now affect the lives of thousands of people, or everyone in my church, or everyone
Hmm.
in this charity, or just everyone in my community, because I'm putting the money back in. And now I have time to do it. Right? When you're working in there, you're like, oh, I don't have time to go get my nails done or this or that, right?
Yeah. And that's just it. You answered the question before I even asked it. I was just like, for the woman who's in the thick of it and still doing all of the work, underpaying herself, solving every problem, and thinking the business is only valuable because she's in it every day, you're the example of how that's not true, that it's way more valuable. That business became way more valuable with you out of it
Yes.
than it was with you in it.
Oh,
But you got it there. So,
absolutely, because I wasn't going to take it to the next level. I didn't want 100 people, right?
mhm,
And that's a very good reason to sell. If
yeah,
you've brought it to the point where you're like, that's all I can do, or that's all I want to do, or it's going to take serious investment in AI, for example, for me
yeah,
to take this to the next level, and I don't want to take it out of my retirement account to do that, that's a perfect reason to sell. You're
mhm,
like, oh, who can take this to the next level that I'm not willing to do, or it will like kill me to do it.
yes,
It's going to so stress me out. I have clients who, have gone through nervous breakdowns. No, don't do that. Like, bring it to the point where you can sell it. And even if you can't sell it, extract what you can out of it. And it's fine to shutter. It's fine to pull the shingle. That is not failure. Look at
yeah,
how many years you paid for yourself, you paid for your family, and you paid all these people on your team. I don't like seeing people have to go down that route, but for some, that's just like they're fine with it. Great, awesome, I'm done. And some stay forever just as an independent contractor.
mhm,
They have their own little solo business. They're extremely happy. I know a few, I tried to hire them. They're like, I never want a boss. And I'm like, okay. They're like, you're great, but I never want a boss. And I'm like, okay, I get it.
I get it.
Fine.
Yeah,
You live on your terms. You make what you can make, in the hours you want to put towards the business. And that's great. Fine.
yeah.
It works for you.
And I think we've hit on it several times throughout this whole conversation is there is an entire, and you said it, I think verbatim in the book, there's an entire buffet out there of choices inside of your business and out. And to think that your options are limited, I think Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And so, whatever it is that you think you want, okay, let's go do that thing. And if you don't want to, don't do it. And I think we've forgotten that we have that option to say no or to pivot or to change our mind. And to have that empowerment back and that choice back and the freedom to just do it. That's the message I hope that we leave people here with today.
And
So
try things. If
yeah.
it doesn't work, what's the worst? I'm a big golfer, right? And
Yep.
so, like Rory McIlroy, the golfer, said he got over problems in his game when he asked himself, what's the worst thing that can happen if I hit this shot? I go find the ball, I hit another one. So do that in business. Try stuff. What's the worst thing that can happen? And I think as women, we often look, oh, that'll be so embarrassing if I fail or do. Oh my gosh, no one cares.
Right.
Right, but right? So just go try stuff. Don't bankrupt yourself, but try
Mhm.
things. And if you have to then fire parts of the team because that division didn't work, you do it. They're at will employees. You say, I'm sorry, this didn't work out, and you part ways and you try something else. But really, if anyone is sitting here listening and saying like, I should try something different, I could build a business, I could go buy a company to
Yeah.
add to my company, don't be afraid to do that, because it actually is freeing in the end, for
Yes.
you to try something like that. And the power you would get even from a failure is knowledge, learning, and the people who take the risk in this world are the ones that actually succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, okay. This was a great conversation. I'm going to put the link to your book, Mastering the Exit Gauntlet, in the show notes. And then I want you to tell us what else you're doing because you are now another writer in another capacity. Tell us about that.
I am a paid contributor to Inc. magazine, writing on business exits and post-sale identity.
That's very cool. And then are you still advising
Yeah.
other?
Yes, I'm an exit advisor, christineslocumb.com, SLOCUMB, on there. And I call myself an exit advisor bestie. I'm like your best friend. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a broker. I'm sitting there holding your hand, drinking a glass of wine with you, over every aspect of getting ready for sale, selling, and then post sale transition.
Yeah. And let me tell you, if you are not even close to thinking about selling, but you own a business, read the book anyway, because there is nothing in here that is not going to help your business today, whether you're selling or not, period. And you're right about the bestie part of it, because this isn't all numbers, and this is a lot of emotional intelligence about the process of the decisions that you had to make and go through and who you wanted to be on the other side of the process. So thank you for writing it. And I enjoyed reading it. I know everybody else will too. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for hosting me, Amanda. It's been a pleasure.
Yep. And we'll talk soon.
Okay.
All right.
Bye bye.
If this lit something up, share it, review it, and get in the room. Join the Expand Your Empire community and start turning wisdom into wealth. You're not too late, and you're not doing this alone.